A lot of you know our guest speaker for today's program, but you may not know all of the, and be familiar with all of her many, many talents and passions. Sandy has been a devoted friend to me since 1960. She is a native of Mahia, and she is, as you can tell, this is where her love for the Indians came from. Sandy is a veteran. She was in Vietnam, and she has a lot of stories that she can tell you about that. She is an American Indian enthusiast, hunting arrowheads in all types of terrain, whether it's the lake, the woods, the cliffs, the rivers, it doesn't matter. She will go on any kind of an arrowhead hunt. Sandy loves to collect memorabilia. And I don't know if you know that she likes NASCARs, she likes toys, she likes any kind of book, any history book. She absolutely just feels she reads all the time. She especially is a poet, and she likes to, every morning, early in the morning, she likes to get her pen and her paper, and she will write on these yellow pads, and she will write all of her thoughts in a poetic form. Many, many days she will sit there and this poetry just flows out of her. There are, this is just a few of the examples of her interest and of a friend. Will you please now welcome Sandy Carroll as our speaker for the fall of Fort Parker.
Hi, everybody. Lily, you want your doll and your mic? We're going to have fun. This, my wonderful friend, is my great niece from Mansfield, Texas. I taught her her first words. You see her grandmother over there, her grandfather over there. Anyway, I am going to let her tell you who she is.
Hello, my name is Lily Kate Hartnett. I'm 9 years old, and I could have been Cynthia Ann Parker in 1836. I am here today to show you how little Cynthia Ann was when she was taken by the Indians. Glance at me while my great aunt Sandy shares the story of Cynthia Ann's capture. It's a true story.
Somebody asked me a while ago, I think it was Eddie, do you get text messages? And somebody over there said, no, she gets smoke signals. I'm going to have fun today, even though this is such a wonderful thing, celebrating the life of Cynthia Ann Parker. And how many of you have been to Fort Parker? Okay, wonderful. Sort of. Then you know what a beautiful place it is. And the story should have been a movie, like Lonesome Dove a long time ago. Maybe someday Lily, as age group, will go back and pay her a tribute. There's not a whole lot of people who have spent their life like Cynthia Ann, who started out with the pioneers, captured by the Indians, 25 years later, captured back by the white race, died of a broken heart. Now, when you look at Lily, you think that this was her age, and that she lost everything in one morning. And it was quick. She had no time to say goodbye to her grandparents, her mother, nobody. She watched her grandpa die. She watched her little brother thrown up on a horse. She was grabbed up, thrown across a horse. And in an hour's time, she was headed for the Llano Estacado. Well, actually, the Trinity River bottoms, because that's where they spent the first night. Now, this child could not speak Indian. She didn't know how to tell them how she felt. Her tears fell on deaf ears. She couldn't get close to her little brother for hours and hours because he was with another warrior on his horse. And that's what this program is all about to me. It's about the guts it took to be a pioneer. Now this is the entrance, in case you haven't been over there in a while, this is the new entrance to Fort Parker with the arrow. And of course they'll have Christmas at the fort the first weekend in December. And the Indians will come down and dance, and they'll have black powder rifles and all that. They didn't used to have it like this, but they do now. Now, the people traveled in what I call the first mobile homes. And the way I understand, there was not a whole lot of road rage. Because the oxen just didn't try to pass each other. But if you will look at these people, I don't see one smiling, really smiling face. Especially the women. Because they rode these wagons, the Parker clan, which there was about 30 of them. They rode in these wagons from Illinois all the way down to Fort Parker. And when you look at those wagons, and you look at them, you know it wasn't an easy trip. They had to carry everything that they had to survive. They had to plan the trip as best they could, which was impossible. You never know what's going to happen. If they messed up a wheel, or if one of their oxen, or their, died, or, if somebody died along the way, got sick. It was unpredictable and dangerous. Right, Lily? Okay, so, anyway, they made it down to Fort Parker because Elder John Parker was a strict Baptist, Hard Rock Baptist. He said that he'd like to bring these people down to Fort Parker and teach them about our God, the white man's God. Some of them didn't want to go, especially the women. They said, we have churches, we have schools, let's stay here, let's don't go down to Texas. He said, no, I need to go down there and teach those heathens about our God. Now those heathens worship the Great Spirit, who, as you know, was the sky, the water, every animal, the hawk, the bird. I don't think they really felt like they needed a replacement. So it really made them mad. But when these people were on the road or at Fort Parker, they had to have entertainment. Now look how happy they are. Just makes you want to jump up and dance, don't it? He looks like he's saying, if I have to play this tune one more time. But anyway, these people were like us. Just exactly. They had their families they loved. They lost. But they came. They're our history. So when the wagons were rolling, part of y'all were rolling too. And some of you that have Indian in you, y'all were rolling too, but in a different direction. Okay? This is the Navasota River. This is beautiful. Indians thought it was beautiful too. It was full of fish. The buffalo came through. It was gorgeous. Had pecan trees, everything. Okay? Now, when the Parkers got word that there was a little bit of land in the Navasota River bottom in Texas, Elder Parker said, that's where we're going to go, to teach the Indians. Well, evidently, as you know, Eddie Perry is a relative here. Evidently, one of Eddie's relatives was up north back at that time. He says, Mr. Parker, I know a nice piece of land down in Texas. Nothing down. What he forgot to tell him, there was 600 Indians living down there. But he got his money. Anyway, this beautiful, beautiful river that I grew up on, thank goodness, is where the Indians lived, and they loved it. Okay, when they put these cabins together, now after being in a mobile home for months, and the harshness of the trails and everything, they put these cabins together, and if you'll look, there's only one person smiling. But that's a brave bunch of people right there. You can tell that. And that, my friends, is a story in itself. That is Fort Parker, for all of you who haven't been. That is the way it looks when you come driving up through that long road, winding road through the woods. That is where it all started. That is where a tragedy took place on a morning in May 1836. And it is just earth-shattering to me to think that in a matter of an hour, this place had been run through, scattered, some areas burned, and everybody's life changed. Inside the fort, they had put these walls up, and you stand on this wall and you shoot through those holes. Now, I'm rather short, so I wasn't going to be doing much shooting. But that's the way they were, and I'm sure they put some barrels up there or something to stand on, and that's the top. So if you wanted to get over the top real quick, you might not need to slow down much. You might need to just crawl up there and jump. And this is a building like Fort Parker, like where Cynthia Ann lived. Now I took Lily over there. She went inside, and she said, I think I'd rather play outside. I wonder why. The beds were wooden. The little table was wooden, everything, earth floor. And that's from her child's viewpoint. I would rather be outside. Now they had a spring right outside the back gate, and that's where they got their water. And they kept their horses penned up inside. They had to. Here's the stockade. Now this is where Lily said she would like to spend most of her time. Because it was spacious, and you had upstairs, and it was more fun, she said. Now the poor guy that had to pull that duty was lonesome. There had to be somebody up there all the time to look out for the Comanches. And, you know, if you slept on the job, you might be buried on the job. Now, we have to talk about the dangers that these pioneers faced. I mean, it wasn't just get up every day and sweep the dirt floor and go tend to a cow or two. They had thick timber, and in that timber was snakes, wild hogs like you see up there, coyotes, bobcat, every kind, panthers, every kind of wild animal, and there was hunting season was open. You had to hunt it to survive. You had to hunt to eat. You had to use their fur. But that and spiders and things like that were things that they had to put up with. Storms. If it became an electrical storm or big storm, they had nothing but these hurricane lamps. How many of you have one in your home today? Wow. I love it when somebody holds up their hand, because that's history burning right there on the table. For a lot of us, that's our grandparents and great-grandparents, and we remember them having them in their houses. It'll bring a tear to your eye, for sure. Had tornadoes just like they do now, but nobody told them it was coming. So if they happened to be off in the fields holding corn or somewhere a mile away, by the time somebody said tornado, it was over. So that just shows me how very strong willed and brave these people were. All they had was God. And you know they prayed to Him every night. But so did the Indians. They had their God too. Clara? I think she went to sleep. The most terrifying time on the Texas frontier was the full moon. When that moon got full, those settlers did not sleep. The Comanches' favorite time to raid was on the full moon. And it spread like wildfire. If you lived in a cabin off by yourself somewhere, you weren't near a fort, well, you prayed all night and kept your gun loaded. They even wrote a movie, book, Comanche Moon. Probably familiar with it. The other night I stepped outside when the moon was full over the farm and it was quiet. And I was thinking, that is so gorgeous. How can you hook that to terror? But they did. They had to. And what a sight. You imagine it rising over Fort Parker, and those families, and little Cynthia Ann was thinking how pretty that is. So for just a little second here, Cynthia Ann and I are going to think about that. She's thinking more than me. Very quiet. In just an hour or so, Cynthia Ann's life changed completely. She was taken in by an old Indian woman. Her warrior deposited Cynthia Ann in her lap and said, "She is yours. You have no other kids." So the old woman bathed her, washed her hair, washed her clothes, and took her in. She lived with this old woman all her young life until she married the warrior, Nakona, Peter Nakona. So you can imagine that Cynthia Ann and the lady could not speak each other's language. The lady had to use her touch to let her know that it's all right, I'm not going to hurt you. And that child had just lost her family, but that loving woman held her in her arms and said in Indian, you know, it'd be all right. So she trusted her. And the years went by, And the day that Cynthia Ann decided to marry the young warrior, it nearly broke the lady's heart. Because they'd just been the two of them for so many years. And she taught this child, Cynthia Ann, she taught her everything. Every Comanche way. She taught her and she learned. And when they abducted her back, and I call it abducted because she didn't want to get them. When the white man came and raided and took her back, she had full tribal rights. And that's something for a woman to have. But by her learning and her knowledge, she had gotten that far with the Indian tribe. Every time white man came, they had to move. Now they didn't travel by mobile home because they had to get out of there fast. They had to pack up the camp probably in 30-40 minutes time and disappear. They had to take the hardest routes through the mountains, creek beds. They went through the Atlanta Estacado, they went up through New Mexico, they went up into Colorado. They went everywhere to escape the white man that they could go. And there she is. The only picture taken of Cynthia Ann Parker after she was recaptured was taken in Fort Worth, and that is her baby, Prairie Flower. The only way they recognized Cynthia Ann when they raided the Indian camp was her eyes. They couldn't tell it by her hair because she had been blonde. I think maybe brown hair, I'm just thinking. But because she had her hair with the buffalo grease and all that, and she'd been in the sun all the time, her skin had turned. And so when Sol Ross, when they captured her, they were reluctant. They said, no, she's a squaw. And he said, no, look at her eyes. They're blue. This is Cynthia Ann Parker. So they snatched her up in Prairie Flower and took off. Immediately she chopped her hair off. You can tell. In mourning. She just lost her family. She never knew what happened to her son, Quanah. She never knew what happened to her husband. She never knew what happened to her other son, Pecos. All in a flash. It was gone again. Didn't even get to say goodbye. Never knew their fate. Then they tried to make her like she was. They tried to say, you're a Parker. It was strange to her. When her relative came to see her after she had been brought to civilization, all she could say was, me, Cynthia Ann. Me. She said, Cynthia Ann. He said, no, Cynthia Ann. No, Cynthia Ann. She cried, she wept, she tried to run away. They'd catch her, bring her back. This is why she wanted to go back. One of the reasons was her son Quanah. She named him Quanah, and that means fragrant, because he was born among the wildflowers in a place they were camped, in a valley. He never knew what happened to his mother. She was just suddenly gone. And he and his little brother ran. They ran as fast as they could and hid. Now, after the Fort Parker raid, and this child was born and started growing up, he learned all the Indian ways, but his mother told him, you're different. She could barely remember, but you're different. Well, he was. He became the last great Comanche chief before he and his people turned themselves into the reservation in Oklahoma. He killed more settlers than any other chief, Indian chief, anywhere in the United States. Revenge. Took his mama. Shouldn't have done that. So he spent his years killing every white person he could kill. Now you can say that's sad, but then again, we don't know how he felt. And we sure don't know how she felt. But we know that she suffered 2 or 3 times because of the whole entire scenario. Now in Groesbeck, in case you ever go there, there's a little cemetery. It's nothing fancy. They erected this monument for Elder John Parker and Granny Parker and Cynthia Ann. And they have the names on the bottom of the statue. And this is a very, very quaint little cemetery. You would never know that this was there. They put all the names of the people that survived and the people that were captured here. This is Cynthia Ann Parker's grave in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, next to her son. Now her body was moved 3 times from when she first died, and moved again, and then finally Quanah said, I want my mother where I'm going to be. So he moved her again. So even in death, she was still traveling. I put this on this deal to show you how many tribes of Indians were in the United States. It's just a little sign. But when we decided to take over the United States and move west, that's how many people we uprooted. Some went easy and some didn't. Some hid in the Everglades, some got up in the Dakotas and they couldn't get them. But the majority of them were moved, and that's why we had the Trail of Tears and all those things. They had nowhere to go in their hearts except back to the Great Spirit. This is the Peace River Battlefield Monument for Cynthia Ann, which tells about her being returned to her uncle's family. She was never completely happy and tried to escape several times. That's at the cemetery where the statues are. It's really wonderful what they have put together. At the end of this program today, we look back and we found a song that was written in 1827, and it was about the death of a child. So we felt pretty sure Cynthia Ann, raised up in a very religious family at first, probably sang this song. And my great niece is going to sing it for you now. That picture there came out of the front of a Zane Grey movie, and I thought I picked it because it's so pretty. It says, the West was beautiful, the West was dangerous, the West was unpredictable, but the West was us. And we should be proud that we're a part of it, whether we're Indian or whether we're whatever we are. Now this sweet little baby here is going to sing our goodbye song. Claire, will you kill the music, please?
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong, they are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus
for coming today. I love every one of you. If I don't get to hug you, I'll hug you at a later date.